Hello everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar. The format for today is a little different. It's an open floor for questions. What we're going to be doing today is Avto Chachava and myself, Jeffrey Asbury, are going to be reviewing our last 12 seminars briefly, just going over what those were and providing links to check them out if you'd like. And then we'll open up the floor for questions regarding topics of installation, network licensing, standalone licensing, and things that may have been covered in previous webinars. If you have questions, you can go ahead and submit them to the questions part of the GoToWebinar, and we can answer them as they come in, and we'll go ahead and get started. So just to let you know, we're going to be reviewing the slides first, reviewing our previous webinars, but you can feel free to answer or ask questions at any time. We'll queue those up for the Q&A section that will be at the end.
Hello everybody, again welcome to this webinar. This is the 13th webinar, which basically summarizes, like what Jeffrey said, all the webinars we have done. We're going to go over it and explain what been covered during these webinar sessions, the previous 12 webinars, and we'll take suggestions if you could offer for the next webinar sessions we will have. Many of those webinars will be reviewed. Some of them will be combined into one webinar. So from 12 we decided to go down to 8 webinars, so that in every 2 months hopefully we're going to review the webinars and update the content of it as they become available or known to us. So these were all the webinars we have done up until now. So first, now here's a poll question. Jeffrey, could you send a poll question? Just curious in how many people attended our previous webinars.
So you should see those popping up. So it looks like the majority of people have attended between 3 and 6 webinars, so it's good to see so many people back again and again to get the information. We even have a few super fans who have been between 9 and 13. So if you've come to every webinar, well, we thank you for your attendance and hope you learned a lot.
Yeah, and hope you can kind of also give us some suggestions for the next webinar, what you would like to hear from us. We really appreciate everybody who have attended the webinars, particularly those who've been there from 9 to 13th. We really value your opinion. Please express in the questions panel. Okay, so the first webinar, that was basically how to set up a license server on a Windows. What was the common problems, common ways of set up a license server. The webinar PowerPoint slides are available and supporting documents are available on our Autodesk box share. It's really easy to kind of find and remember the share folders for each webinar. It's autodesk.box.com, up and ready IQ number 1. So the second webinar will be number 2 and number 3 and so on and so forth. We also have the webinar posted on Autodesk YouTube channel, and here is a link to it too. The current webinar slides, by the way, will be uploaded to this particular webinar's corresponding box share, which will be autodesk.box.com, up and ready IQ 13th. And if you download this webinar, you're going to have all the links available. Now below we have also the links how to register for the webinars. Now the webinars we offer for Build Your Up and Ready Knowledge Webinar Series, right? That's a series webinar, so if you sign up only on once, every next webinar reminder will be sent to you when time comes. So you just basically need to sign up once. And if for any reason you would like to sign out, you can also sign out as well. But again, you don't need to register in every single webinar. You can choose to attend or not. But once you signed up, you are with us, and you will receive the reminders for each. So the second webinar was related to the license file analysis, what's composed Autodesk network license file. We discussed that during this webinar, how to combine the license, what the license file is about, what's the difference between point product license versus the suite license, what's the increment license, what's the package license, and things of this nature, and best practices of combining the licenses, reading the licenses, And again, the second webinar slides can be obtained if you have not, if you do not have those, and if you would like to review, autodesk.box.com, Open Ready IQ 2, and the same webinar full recording with questions and presentation is available on Autodesk YouTube channel. The playlist name is Build Your Autodesk Up and Ready webinar series. So there is kind of the link. It can take you to the YouTube. And for example, if I click over here, it should take me to YouTube channel. It's going to take some time, but at some point it will, I guess. Yep, and here it is, and here is all the webinar series in case you would like to kind of come back and review them, you know. So I'm gonna close this one now, and again, if you click on this hyperlink, it's gonna take you to a webinar registration page. Let's make sure that it's everything good. Yes, that's our welcome page for the webinars. And we can update the title topics for the next few webinars which come out. And again, here is the links from the landing page where to go. Let's say how to get a YouTube channel, how to get a webinar feedback post. That's also a really good resource for you guys, particularly in this Autodesk forum post. We keep questions and answers which were asked during the webinar session to the public audience, so that if somebody wasn't available to attend, they can hear and have a kind of brief notes what questions were asked and what were answered. And you can also ask the questions there, and sometimes when there is no time left to answer a question during the webinar session, we put the answers on the forum. Now the third webinar was Build Your Autodesk Glass Installation IQ. And during this webinar, we discussed how to install Autodesk product and different ways of installing it, such as like install now from the web browser, from the internet, download now, browser download, and what were the plus and minuses of each installation methods. We have not touched the deployment creation at this particular webinar. So again, the PowerPoint slides are available. Autodesk.box.com, Upper and the IQ3, and there is a link to the available full recording of the webinar session on Autodesk YouTube channel. And the fourth webinar was related to how to create a deployment, what are the common mistakes, or how to modify deployments in order to find a kind of installation scripts, such as like SCCM installation scripts in deployment folder, what they mean and things like that. So again, this webinar also is available on the YouTube channel, and the link is available over here as well with the slides, and webinar slides are available on Up and Ready IQ4, and these links are all there, so if you just click it, it should take you there. Fifth webinar was related to installation log file analysis. This was one of the popular webinars from our attendees. We had close to 100, I believe, registered users, and from there 80 people have attended. It was kind of we received a good feedback on this webinar. I really remember very well how it went. During this webinar, we basically looked through the log files, which is created during the Autodesk product installation, and analyzed the log files. How to find, how to troubleshoot, how to identify the problems reporting during the webinar, during the installation time of a product, and how to isolate them from the good installation, good log files. We talked about two types of log files, such as a setup log file and a product-specific log file, and what are the differences, and so on and so forth. Again, the webinar recording is available on Autodesk YouTube channel. A link is available in this PowerPoint slide, and the webinar support files are Up and Ready IQ5, Autodesk.box.com, Up and Ready IQ5. Sixth webinar was related to the network licensing. Now, so that was related, when you have your license server set up, for example, and you were getting some kind of network licensing error messages, whether on the server side or on a client side. We went through the most common error messages our customers report to us when they are utilizing the network licensing method or model of licensing their Autodesk software. We covered how to troubleshoot them, how to identify and what are the common practices to avoid them. Again, the full webinar is on YouTube channel, and slides are available on Autodesk IQ 6. Link is all on the slides. And the 7th webinar was installation troubleshooting knowledge. Now, so this webinar was like when we discussed in the 5th webinar related to how to read the log file and analyze it, identify the problems. Now, this was after identifying these problems, what to do after that, how to troubleshoot, how to fix it. Webinar also was well received by our customers, and we really appreciate all of them for the good feedback. Again, the slides are available on Autodesk box share. It's up under the IQ 7th, and full recording is on the YouTube Autodesk channel as well. 8th webinar was to boost your knowledge with Autodesk software prerequisites. That was also very interesting webinar, when we talked about prerequisites Autodesk products have, what are the common problems with them, how to avoid them, how to correct, how to avoid, avoid their installation or trust already pre-installed prerequisites on the system, and how to identify what are the prerequisites of each product in a granular level, just reading through the setup INI files of each product installation. Again, the slides are available on the Autodesk brochure up to the IQ 8, and the full webinar recording is also available on Autodesk YouTube channel. 9th webinar was boost your Apple Mac IQ. As you know, there are a few products Autodesk has which are supported natively on the Mac. So during this webinar, we talked about I'm really sorry about a description here is kind of wrong, but we'll update that. So during this webinar, it was shared with you guys, the main issues which came across with Autodesk products on the Mac. What are the problems, how to avoid them, how to fix them, tips and tricks. 10th webinar was related to reinstallation of on the Windows side. On the Windows side, the cleaner installation of Autodesk products. So we discussed different ways of reinstalling the products on the Windows side, and unfortunately during the recording, the voice quality wasn't clear enough to upload the webinar to Autodesk YouTube channel. So, however, having said that, full webinar recording is available on Autodesk box share. If you go to autodesk.box.com, upload the IQ 10th, you'll be able to download and listen to the full webinar. 11th webinar was related to network license manager setup on OS X and Linux. So typically, most of our customers have their license servers set up on Windows platform. However, the Autodesk license manager is supported on OS X and Linux, and for those few customers who need help or need information how to set it up for on these two platforms, we covered all the tips and tricks, installation procedure, because the main differences between setting up a license server on OS X and Linux and against the Windows is that the license manager on Mac and Linux doesn't have a graphic user interface, and everything has to be done through the command line. So we covered all the tips and tricks and what could be done, how to avoid, how to create the custom scripts, and how to create the startup scripts, how the ways to automate the license server startup after the system reboot. And again, the webinar is available, full recording is available on Autodesk YouTube channel, and links and PowerPoint slides are available on Up and Ready IQ 10th. That's a folder for Autodesk.box.com. It's publicly available. You should be able to download it. So the last webinar, the previous webinar, just last week's webinar, was related to troubleshooting desktop subscription licensing issues. Desktop subscription, that's same as it's also called a rental or term-based licensing. It's a new licensing method we have introduced this year, in the past year. So which basically is similar to the standalone product activation, but on top of it, it has authentication per user base. So what were the differences between a desktop subscription licensing versus standalone or network licenses, and how to troubleshoot any issues related to it, known issues we have. It's all were covered in the last week's webinar, and the webinar is available. Full recording is available from Autodesk YouTube channel, and PowerPoint slides can be obtained autodesk.box.com up under the IQ 12 folder. Now, these were what was done up until now. So, in these slides, you see what we are going to do from now on. As I mentioned in the beginning of the current presentation, initially we had up until now like 13. This is 12 fully topic webinars, but from now on, we squeezed it to the 8. We combined network license server setup and network license file analysis and troubleshooting steps into one webinar, which is network license server setup and troubleshooting. That's going to be in next week's webinar. And Jeffrey Asbury, my co-presenter in this webinar, will be presenting the next week's webinar. So if you guys want or attended the previous webinars, but you still have some questions, that's a good place for you to ask Jeffrey to include and cover your interest during the webinar session. Just a moment, please. Then we're going to go through Setup Network Licenses Manager on OS X and Linux. So it's going to be redo webinars. Oh, one more thing I would like to kind of mention here. So even though the top few topics stays the same and some of the topics are combined, what we decided to do is to select different presenters to present these topics. By selecting the different presenters, we're hoping that they can put some extra or different view or perspective on a given subject, because each technician, each service specialist has its own ways of troubleshooting the problems, and we thought that it would be a kind of better idea for you guys to share what they have to say or offer. So even though the topical topics of the webinar topics in the future could sound identical, but I would expect to have those topics to have a little different and tweaked content from the previous ones. So if you can attend, I hope you can gain some more knowledge of it. So after setup a license server manager on OS X and Linux, that's going to be redoing the webinars. Then we're going to cover again the licensing side. We put the licensing problems together in one in 1 month time frame, like a February time frame. We're going to cover desktop subscription licenses again on February 19th, and at the end of February we're going to go through the Autodesk product installation options. Then in the March time frame we're going to cover troubleshooting Autodesk product installation issues, clean reinstall Autodesk software on Windows, clean reinstall of Autodesk software on a Mac OS X, and software and hardware prerequisites of Autodesk products. Basically, we hope that within this 2-month time frame we can help you to be ready whenever the new releases of Autodesk software comes out, to be successful, to install successfully on your systems and update your license servers for the corresponding licenses. These were all we wanted to discuss today. And again, slides have the links, where you can sign up for these webinars. You may not see the webinar topics listed at this moment, but it's going to be updated anytime. Hopefully by end of the day, today or tomorrow, or titles will be available. So that's some kind of additional tips and tricks. So that's our blog site. If you guys can go through our blog site and visit it, it's really a live blog. That's blog, up and ready blog. Many of you probably know about it, because when we hear something or some kind of problems, or we run into some kind of solution, we find out some kind of workaround solution, or we are not able to find a solution, but we know there's a problem. It's all published there, and it's good resource to get familiar with. Also has very good links here. So the subscribe link takes you, a knowledge network takes to the Autodesk knowledge network search engine. Installation help docs will take you to the product installation documentations, online documentation available from Autodesk sites. Installation forums going to take you to the Autodesk installation forums and certified hardware system prerequisites. Let's all kind of show you what are the minimum system requirements and recommended system requirements for your Autodesk product. So that was essentially what we wanted to share with you in this webinar. It's basically our idea was to get together with you. Thank you for attending our webinars. And if there is any questions, please feel free to ask. Any suggestions, please feel free to ask, because what we want to do is to get you to bring up your Autodesk product installation licensing knowledge in a new level.
Okay, so we've already had some questions submit, and we'll go through those, and everyone feel free to continue to submit questions if anything comes up or if you need any follow-up. So we'll just start hitting the questions that we already have in, and I'm going to start with one that says, when we, with the transition to account from subscription, we'll be able to generate our own network license files. So I mean, I guess the answer to this is you should be able to generate your own network license files now. What you can do is you can go on to registeronce.autodesk.com. You can log in and generate a network license file just by entering in the serial number or the server information. Now, the restriction may be is that if you don't have those products assigned to your Autodesk account when you log in, you won't be able to necessarily generate a license file for them. Mostly the contract managers, software coordinators on the account are going to be the ones who generate license files. But if you need to have that permission, you can always submit a ticket or talk to your contract administrators on your contract and see if they can set you up with those permissions. I'm going to put a link in the chat here about the steps on how to generate your own network license file. For most users, that's going to be what they need to do. So there's another one here. When I create a network deployment, where is the server name saved? And I want to be able to edit a file to change that server name. So server name could mean a couple different things. Potentially either you mean the server where the network deployment is located, or you might mean the network license server name. So that's two different answers, but there's a way to change both of those. So let's cover first, you want to change the server name of where the the deployment is located. So the deployment, when you create it, you're going to enter in a path to where that deployment is being housed, and potentially your server name might change. So if your server name is alpha and you change your server name to beta, that path is still written into the INI file of the deployment as alpha, and then people might have some problems. There is a location in the INI file. It's called admin_image_location, and it basically records what that path is. And you can manually edit the INI file just using Notepad. I'm going to put in a link to a document as well that gives you the steps on what to do if you want to change that server location in a deployment without having to go through and rebuild it or do anything too extraordinary. And it looks like Alto is bringing that up too. So let's.
Jeffrey, just a moment. So the change to the server name, like Jeffrey said, like a location of the deployment server from where you're trying to you're publishing your deployment to your clients. Is written into the INI files of a deployment name INI files. However, to change it, like this procedure can kind of work for you, so don't have to worry much. Like basically what you do is And this is like how to move a deployment image from one system to the other. So officially it's not recommended, but I've never seen a problem moving a deployment from one system to the other, provided that the copy functionality did not report any error messages or any copying the files and folders from server 1 to server 2. But once you move it there, so here is how to change the shortcut parameters into the create and modify deployment image. So you have to change this shortcut parameters, like where to point it. And then once you run the modified existing deployment configuration, that will automatically update your INI files with the correct your new server name. That option can kind of be much easier for you to do, as opposed to kind of open up a INI file and even try to find out the server names there. We can do that one too.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're talking about changing the name of the network license server that it's pulling its license from, that's not saved in the INI file. So if that changes, you basically need to go into your deployment, go into the tools folder, and then do a create/modify deployment, modify your deployment, and when you get to the wizard, it'll bring up the option to type in the license server information again. So those are, hopefully that answers your question. But those are the steps. Go ahead, Abdul.
Yeah, sorry, Rev. So that's kind of officially how to do it, but if you're like a programmer person and you're familiar with the MSD files, if you open up MSD file, load into the Orca, you can find the server name information into the MSD file, and you can change it there too. But the easiest way of doing it, it could be like time consuming a little bit, because sometimes to reload the deployment through the create and modify deployment may take a while. Depends, where your deployment is hosted and from which system you're trying to run this create and modify deployment. Basically, two ways of changing the license server information in a build deployment image.
Okay, so another question was, when installing ADMS 2015, does it install IIS if IIS is not already installed on the server? So I actually didn't know that off the top of my head, but I just got in touch with one of the members of our Vault team, and he confirmed, yes, if you don't have IIS, it will be installed automatically, assuming that you're installing with an admin account, has the permissions to enable that service. So hopefully that answers that question. Moving on. So this question is, to upgrade the FlexLM License Manager, I've simply stopped the service, overwritten the 4 files that make up the software, then restart the software. Is there any reason this technique should not be used? I would say yes. There are registry keys that get written with the license server installation. The cleanest thing that you're going to want to do to update your license manager is actually stop the service, uninstall the old version of the license manager, and install the new version. Registry keys will get written, entries into the programs and features control panel will get written that let you uninstall it later. So we always recommend, rather than manually replacing the files, is to stop it, uninstall it, install the latest version, start it again, and then that should take care of things for you, and it doesn't take too much more time than just replacing the files. Another question, so they have, customer has Building Design Suite Premium deployed on a few client PCs. If AutoCAD MEP is left unattended for a while, a message will appear that says the software will shut off in 6 minutes, and then the message repeats until the software shuts down. So essentially there's 2 reasons that a message like that could be coming up. One would be is if the license timeout feature is enabled on the system, and that system is idle for the time given. License timeout feature is a feature that you can put on the options file for a server, and it basically dictates that if there's a period of inactivity that you specify, then the license will be reclaimed. Now the other, assuming that that timeout feature is not in place, the other potential reason is that the client has lost connectivity with the licensed server. The clients are going to do a heartbeat check with the server periodically. If they miss enough of those in a row, they will no longer see their license as valid. And if that's happening, what's probably the case is on the client system, it's not resolving the server correctly. Maybe the IP address of the server changed and the DNS hasn't updated or something like that might be preventing that connection. Now, usually it's not just a blip either. These heartbeats don't happen super often, so you kind of have to have a loss of connectivity to the server for like 20 minutes or so before a message like this pops up. It's different based on there's different timing for different products, but 20 minutes would be about average, I'd say. So if you're seeing a message like that and you're not using any kind of timeout feature, then there's probably something strange going on with your network routing between those clients and the server. And that's probably where I'd suggest starting your investigation. It can get a little complex, but that's essentially what's going on. Okay, and let's see here. I don't see any other questions right now, so if anybody has anything, feel free to type it in.
Again, this is if you are going to kind of attend the next week's webinar related to network license server setup and troubleshooting, so Jeff is the main presenter on that webinar, and so it's a good time for you guys to ask the question or suggest a topic you would like to see him covered during the next webinar.
So one question that just came in, will Autodesk support FlexNet Publisher? So I would say it's unlikely that's going to happen. Autodesk doesn't officially support it right now. FlexNet Publisher will work in some cases, but if you run into trouble, Autodesk doesn't support it because it's not what we include with our software packages. And to tell you the truth, I don't think Autodesk is going to change its stance on that anytime soon. The only officially supported network license server manager is LM Tools at this time. Okay, so I haven't seen any other questions come in, but if anyone does have any other questions about any of these specific topics that are coming up in the upcoming webinars, you can always mark that on your calendar, sign up for those webinars, and there's going to be a question and answer period at the end of any of those webinars for us to cover questions related to the topic that was in that webinar. So if you're looking out for more details on any specific subjects, be sure to sign up for those webinars. And it looks like we just had a rush of questions come in as I said that, so let me just see here. So do we know of any issues using Server 2002 R2 on the for the network license server? So I'm sorry, Server 2012 R2. So right now it's not.
Yeah.
Yes and no. There may be problems. Alto, do you want to elaborate any more?
What I would like to say about the 2012 and latest Autodesk License Manager 11.12. So it seems like with 2012 particularly, with the latest version of the Autodesk License Server tools, if it happens so that on the same server you have a multiple FlexLM-based license servers set up, let's say for SolidWorks or Foundry or any other products which is using the FlexLM license-based manager. So it seems like there could be a problem licensing the Autodesk products. Because what happens essentially is that the FlexLM based products license manager, it allows you to run multiple master daemon, which is lmgrd.exe file. However, when the request comes for a license from the client side, like lmgrd, the master daemon needs to connect to the vendor daemon. In our case, it's Autodesk flex.exe file, and if by default the license server, master license server manager's port number is not specified into the Autodesk license file, because we expect it to pick any number, any open port from 27,000 to 27,009, and which does so. However, when request comes, request may be picked up by a different license manager's LMGRD process and be taken to a different vendor daemon, which will not be able to correctly identify the product and license, and end user, like on the client side, will get the licensing error message. So for that to resolve, it's a really simple solution, just to add a specific port number to the LMGRD process, which runs Autodesk License Server Manager. It's a very simple workflow. I believe Jeffrey will cover that in next webinar sessions, just to add a port number into the license file, restart the license service, and that should take care of it. So that's the common thing which comes to my mind, when somebody talks about the 2012 server and the latest license server managers.
Okay, one question, is there a way to change the serial number of a standalone suite to another, or do you have to uninstall and reinstall? The cleanest way is to uninstall and reinstall your suite. There is, so if you've launched the product, there is an option. If you go into the product information, view the licensing information, you can update, you can activate again there. But I haven't had consistent success doing that, especially when you install a suite. There's a whole bunch of products installed, and I usually recommend, as the cleanest way of doing that, just to do a full uninstall and reinstall the suite. And then the easiest way to do that is using if you're using 2014 or 2015 product, is using the uninstall tool. Rather than going and uninstalling all of your products one by one, you go into the Autodesk folder, you launch the uninstall tool, and you're going to see all the products associated with a particular suite to uninstall, and then you can reinstall with the new serial number.
On the same topic, if you happen to, because this is like I don't see really a reason of changing the serial number as a good way of doing it, because now see, if you have a standalone Autodesk suite and you have activated it on the system, you're using it, and suddenly you want to kind of change the serial number. Once you change the serial number, either way, whether on installation or installation, or from within the product feature, product information window from within the product, right, you will still need to reactivate on that new serial number to get your license. And that same way, your product becomes double licensed on the system. So in Autodesk servers, it will still remember that on that system, the previous serial number you've changed is active. Probably you end up like a double licensing it. So it's not a good idea. But if you think like changing the serial number from standalone to network or vice versa can change the licensing behavior of your product, that won't happen. Because to change the licensing behavior, cleanest way is to reinstall the product with a different licensing method. Let's say you had a standalone product license installed and activated, and then you would like to kind of change the same product with a network license. So the cleanest way is to install and uninstall, and during the installation select the network licensing method or standalone license method, whichever your task requires from you. But some products, such as AutoCAD, does have registry hacks and how to change it without installation, which also published in our opportunity blog, and we can kind of refer to it. But again, so that's a workaround, that's a registry hacks, that's something like what we came up and troubleshooted and find out. But officially, developers do not support that. They would recommend still reinstallation. of the product. I just wanted to kind of add on Jeffrey's response on this.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I agree with that 100%. And anytime you're doing, any potential of these types of, workaround type solutions, those haven't been tested by our QA teams or anything like that. So if a problem comes up, it may not have been encountered at the development stage, and that's why, certain ways of doing things are recommended, because those are the ones that have been tested. Okay, so we have a question here, just to follow up on what we discussed earlier with editing the MST file and the deployment. Which MST file is the license manager server saved in? I don't know that off the top of my head. Auto, do you have that?
Sure, it will be a different deployment name MST file.
So it's based off of the name of your deployment.
Yeah, once you create your deployment, you go to you find out your MSI file for the deployment. The MSI file will have a name like a deployment name MSI, and inside that folder there will be a deployment name, that MST file. But again, if you have not done that, if you are not familiar with using Orca, it's much better way would be to use the create a modified deployment tool like Jeffrey suggested. So because playing around the MST file, if you're not familiar with it, can cause some problems. Okay, let me just check something here really. Okay, so here's for example, I had the AutoCAD 2015 deployment. So, I have two shortcuts. That means that I have two completely differently configured the installers. So if, for example, one installs AutoCAD 2015 and -2 will install probably Surspec 2 or something, but that's probably the basic installation. But now again, if you go to IMG folder, okay, so first before we go there's the tools, and here is the create a modified deployment. So you just run this create a modified deployment, and the change you select which deployments you want to kind of modify. If you have one, by default it creates one shortcuts, but if you have used the same deployment to create two shortcuts to two different configurations for the clients, you have an option to select the name of the deployment you would like to kind of modify. Okay, that's from the tools folder. Now in IMG folder, so there is a 64-bit deployment, right? But here you can see setup INI, and there is INI files. But we don't care about that at this moment. So we go to 64-bit, and we go inside the AutoCAD. So inside the AutoCAD, now you can see that there is two MST files, each one corresponding to my shortcut and configuration. So here is the AutoCAD MSI file, that's the base one, and whichever MST file is applied to the AutoCAD MSI, that type of configuration going to be installed on a client system. So that's basically how it is. And if you load this one there, and you will see. Now, let me see if I have Orca here. Yeah. For example, if you go here, so then. Okay, AutoCAD MSI. Okay, so you see all the properties the deployment has. These are not configurable unless are you a programmer or and then you can go and load a transform, apply transform. Let's say you're applying this one. So you're gonna load that. Takes its own time. So once it's loaded, you can see like a green bars here. So these are the properties which were altered during deployment creation based, and here is what I've changed, right? So now if I go down, so I should reach the properties, I believe. Yeah, properties, and somewhere here you can see now what's MST file looks like. Like again, the green value, green boxes highlighted are the ones which information comes from a server. Now, for example, comes serial number and minimal deployment or what kind. And here comes my server name. Like here is the server name, so they can see this one added to the license server side. Where the installation directory. But again, unless you are familiar with it and you have done many times, we do not suggest you going in this way. Okay, because you may kind of make a problem. And before change, you're going to think you need to kind of back up the original ones, by the way. How much? It's going to be much easier for you to, if you are the new user and you're not familiar with programming or something, to use again tools and create and modify. So I cannot start it from here, because I need to. Come in a second. Okay. So it was UNC path, and I wanted to kind of maintain it, not to get any kind of error messages. So if, for example, if we go here, and start to create a modified deployment, it may take a while, like, okay, you must restart the prerequisites is not wrong. Okay, so there's something we are doing with this. So I just don't want to restart the system. We cannot get disconnected by that. But basically start that, and you'll have an option modifying it.
Yeah, I mean, and the only downside of doing that is that obviously when you do a modified deployment, some files have to be brought over to the system that you're doing the modification from. Temporary files are created. Sometimes if the network is slow or something like that, you may have some time, but it is also the easiest. You're going to get a nice graphical user interface to make any of the changes, to the way you're configuring your programs. If you want to, change any paths for where it's installed, if you want to change the license server, if you want to add any service packs, that's the simplest way to do it. And there are a few things that can be changed in the INI file in just plain text using Notepad, but for some of these other configurations, the MST file is where it is, and really easiest way of editing that is just to modify the deployment. Okay, so we have another follow-up on updating your license server. The question was, is there a way to save services that will be maintained between the uninstall of the old FlexLM version and the install of the new FlexLM version? So actually, that's done by default. So when a service is created by LM Tools, it's not stored in LM. It's not stored by the Flex license server or anything. It's actually created as a service on Windows. When you uninstall, it doesn't delete that service. So what is actually going to happen is if you uninstall an old version, the service will still be there. If you install a new version, it's going to show that service again. Now the only thing you might need to look at though is that service is going to maintain with whatever paths it had previously. So if you've installed the license server in a different directory than it was before, the service would still be pointing to the previous directory. You may need to double check those paths in your config services tab of LM Tools, but you don't actually have to recreate the service. We recommend in our instructions that you delete the service and recreate it, just because then you know for sure that the paths are correct, but it's not actually required. You can leave the services there, and they'll maintain through uninstalling and reinstalling the license server.
True. And here's a kind of registry entries, I showed you on my screen, guys. If you, so that's even if you uninstall the server, so this registry information is still kept on the server side, on the system. And when you install the server, the new server, and you open up a like LM Tools window, right? You'll see your previous configuration information. So either you need to delete that from within the LM Tools window. For example, if I go to LM Tools, this is a service, right? I go here and remove the service. That's going to remove this information. But if you just uninstall it, it still maintains here, because it thinks like you're going to install at some point, and here are the old ones. To modify that, you can actually go into the config services and modify information. If you change your server name and things like that. Now, the good reason to uninstall service is that because sometimes the customers do, and I also myself have done, like, change the server files from one system to the other, but from one version to the other. But sometimes you may miss, you may see that like LMGRD is running, and you may not be able to actually kind of you may think that you've changed it, but it was used by other program, or it was not kind of fully updated. So by uninstalling it, really make sure that the system corresponding files are out. But otherwise, there is really no much problem. Let me go to program files, for example, my license manager. Now you can see now, so this is my license server manager installation. So I have a different versions of it. Let's say for 2010. Oh, I don't have it in. I'm sorry. Log files are here. But I usually kind of copy them, like probably not on this particular laptop system, but on my desktop I do have different versions, and sometimes I do change for testing purposes this information. But the good way is to kind of uninstall or install. It's really, and when you do the installation, you need to install the IP version 4 first, because the IP version 4 will create corresponding registry keys for you. The other one, IP version 6 installer for the license manager, it doesn't register itself properly into the other in app programs and features applet and Windows control panel. So that's why you need to install IPv4 and then you install and then replace the files. And because IPv6 supporting tools by Flexer, there was more like a fix, another supporting like a hot fix for the problems they had with IPv4 naturally built binaries.
Okay. So just moving on to some other questions here. There's one, how do you deactivate a license on a system? So if you have a standalone license and you're moving off of that computer, or if you're reinstalling Windows or doing anything like that, you're going to want to use a license transfer utility to export that license off of the system. The license transfer utility is going to be installed when you install any standalone license product from Autodesk, and you're going to find it in that product folder under your start menu. You go to Programs, Autodesk, and then in that particular product folder you'll see License Transfer Utility. You can transfer that license off of the computer before decommissioning it or moving to a new system. If you're using a rental license or a temporary license like that, then you don't have to take that action. That's only for permanent standalone licenses. Rental licenses are tied to the account login, so you don't need to take any special action. Okay, we have a question. Is there a way to know which product from within a suite is calling a license? Basically want to know if Navisworks or Revit is calling a license. So, unfortunately, the way that suite licensing is set up, the license request goes towards the actual suite feature, not any particular product within the suite. So from the licensing side of things, it doesn't record which product actually requested that. All it records is what user requested license, what computer requested license, when they requested it, and what feature they requested, which would be the suite feature. In most cases, unless you have individual product licenses as well, then you would see whether it was, if you have AutoCAD license and a building design suite license, and somebody launches AutoCAD, you may see that it gets the AutoCAD license first. But if it's one product within the suite, all you're going to see is that the suite license got checked out, unfortunately.
That's actually because that's set up so that license cascading can occur properly.
Mm-hmm.
Because AutoCAD first takes the AutoCAD license, like an AutoCAD base license, and then goes to the next license in the cascading sequence. So suite license is somewhere, for example, if it's a building design suite, I believe it's like 7th. So AutoCAD has to go like 5 different loops to reach the suite license. So if that's the why you don't see the AutoCAD license and the product, because the suite product key. Suite license code covers.
Right. So if you're trying to find out who's using which software or who has what installed, looking from the licensing side of things is not going to be an efficient way to do it. You're probably going to need to use some kind of management tool like Microsoft SCCM or something to inventory the computers in your environment and find out that way, because you're not going to get a real clear picture just by looking at the licensing side of things.
True.
All right. I think that's all we had for questions. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. We had a lot of good questions, and I think hopefully we helped some people out. And I look forward to seeing you next week at our network license server setup and troubleshooting seminar.
Thank you, everybody, for registering this webinar series, and hope to hear and see you on the next session of our webinars. After the Build Your Afternet Knowledge webinar series. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us today.